The first time I stepped foot into Abode, I knew I had found someplace special. It was like coming home. I had crossed the threshold to provide bedside yoga to the residents who live there. We call them guests. And I felt I had entered into a safe nest. There was a peaceful energy. The staff and volunteers that I met seemed really happy to be there. It just felt good. What's fun for me now is hearing how others describe that same crossing of the threshold into Abode, their first impressions. We've heard it here on the podcast. People describe it as a feeling, a peaceful energy, a cocoon. Like me, they describe it as home. I suspect that it has a lot to do with the co-founders. Edwin and Patsy Sasek had a vision to create a safe space to care for individuals at the end of life. But it didn't stop there. The Saseks wove in their love of art and spirituality and infused it into the very air that we all breathe inside Abode. It is a sacred place. It is a social place. It is a spiritual place. Abode is home. For our final episode of Season 3, I am excited for you all to meet these visionaries, Edwin and Patsy Sasek. Welcome to Before You Go, the official podcast of Abode Contemplative Care for the Dying. At Abode, our mission is that we live in a world where death is not feared, and we live fully until we die. And we'd like to make that happen before we go. I'm Natalie Buster at Abode in San Antonio, Texas. Welcome to Before You Go. Oh my goodness, hello you two.
Hi,
Natalie.
Oh, I
It's so
love
nice
that.
to see you.
Love the introduction.
Oh yeah, well it's from my heart. I mean really, I remember that first day that I walked into Abode and it was like nothing I had ever experienced before. And I really saw the art that was so prevalent everywhere and just the energy that that brought to the space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, that way that you describe it of walking in and it being a place that's welcoming and you know, some of that has to do with just the beauty, which includes the design of the home, the landscaping of the home, the art inside of the home, and just this general sense of being in a place that's warm and welcoming and really grounded in some ways in the foundation and in the beams in the walls and in the ceiling and of welcoming through prayer and comprehension and compassion for guests who arrive, for volunteers and staff who come to work, for hospice agencies and their staff to come, that they'll feel that sense of welcoming and warmth and beauty.
Oh, that's so
And I
beautifully
think
put.
the arts of living and dying were so important to us. We wanted Abode to be a beautiful space that felt like home, but a beautiful, the most beautiful home one could imagine. So we made sure that every part of it had not just art, but original art by local artists, and that every little detail was artistic and had meaning. So starting with looking for the property, we looked all over San Antonio for months, and we very much wanted nature, the art of nature, to be a part of the home, to give it a calm and peaceful feeling. And we finally found that property. It was kind of right under our noses because we live very close by. And when we first got there, the first thing we noticed were the trees.
Yeah.
And they spoke to us. We knew that was the place, didn't we?
Oh, immediately. We were just like, oh my gosh, this is it.
There are heritage oaks there, and 20 something in all oak trees on almost an acre of land. And we wanted our guests to be able to look out on that and enjoy it and see the birds and the butterflies and have their loved ones be there with them in a casual and inspiring location.
It's such a
And as you know,
beautiful space because I think what's so special about it is the infusion of nature.
mhm.
And Patsy, I've heard you describe not only the extra, what we see of the actual tree trunks and the branches and everything, but there's also something special about the roots and how
Yes,
the roots of these trees help support our mission at Abode.
they do. And, we know from studying about trees that they talk to each other, that they communicate through their roots. They let each other know when there's danger, when there's where there's water, where there's food. And that was so important for Abode because we wanted everyone there to feel a part of the roots that were under them, and that was nourishing them and caring for them.
So, did you lose any trees during the construction of the home?
We lost only one tree. We were really grateful to the designer and the tree company that took such care and understood how important the trees were on the property. So yeah, and that sense too of guests being able to appreciate being outdoors and among the trees, so to speak, when they're able to come out of their rooms is really a special part of the design too.
They're part
And
of nature. The guests are part of
Mhm,
nature that way.
mhm.
mm,
They are.
Yeah.
They sure are.
I feel like the way the house was nestled in among the trees is almost like the trees are embracing
Mm, mm,
Abode.
mm, mm,
And throughout the property, the meditation trails wind around the trees, and that huge heritage oak in the back by the labyrinth
mm,
is just like you just kind of feel a kinship to
mm,
it.
mm,
And I know that it's sort of mothering all of
mm,
us.
mm, mm, mm.
Yeah, they're
What
very important.
what a great metaphor, just to be held in the heart and in the arms of these
Yeah,
trees.
yeah.
Edwin, you had mentioned something really special about how the spirituality is woven into the beams of the house itself. And there's a great story about, well, I'd love for you to tell it about what went into the creation of the house and the special things that you did to make sure that we were supported by the beams and by the blessings in the beams.
Mhm.
It just it occurred to us, I guess, when the walls were coming up, that let's add prayers to the interior of the walls. And so there were, I don't know, 10 or 12 people there for
Mhm.
that day that we decided to do that. And we all had note cards, and people wrote prayers of compassion and prayers of thanksgiving and prayers of well-being and notes of encouragement for anyone who would come into the home, that they would have that kind of sense of grounding. And then also in the beams too, and the beams throughout the house, there are prayers and scriptures written on the beams throughout the house. The door going out where guests come in and go out is also has beams that have prayers on that as well. So the sense too was, when we were creating Abode, we really wanted to have the opportunity to learn from the great world traditions who have been teaching a contemplative way of living throughout. And so we added prayers from the Muslim tradition and from the Buddhist tradition and the Christian tradition and Native American tradition, so that we could really notice that they're holding us and giving peace and giving a sense of well-being in this process of transition. And I sense that, what that allows for people to come into the home is to sense that tranquility and welcoming and peace. And as we've been able to, report, and we've experienced people who've come there as guests, to sense it is home, and they sense the love that's there too, talking about that. So
It's one of the tenets of Abode that
yeah,
all who walk in the door are welcome.
Well,
And what a beautiful way to do that by
mhm.
representing all faiths, all
yeah.
beliefs.
Hmm.
No one is left out, no one is excluded.
And
No.
different languages.
Hmm.
Mm.
But I think that's why when people enter, it's like entering a cathedral almost, because you can feel it, but you don't know exactly why you feel that. And it's because of all those prayers in the walls.
I think that's a really great reason for that, and I think
Yeah,
that's what people say. They don't know what it is, but
yeah,
their hair stands up, they get chills,
Mhm.
yeah,
like good chills, and you
yeah.
just feel a sense of peace and welcoming.
Mhm.
And also probably would you say too that part of what that experience is like is coming in and just seeing how beautiful the home is on the interior, with the way that we had help determining what kind of furniture would go in the living room. And when one of the features that we love to talk about so much is the mantelpiece on the fireplace. Why don't you
Mhm.
tell that
Well,
story?
we wanted everything to have an artistic touch. So when they were discussing, when we were telling the contractor what we wanted, the stone fireplace, we knew that we wanted something special for the mantle. So we went to a place outside of San Antonio and picked mesquite, raw mesquite wood that we had made into that mantle. So it was hand picked, and being a beautiful, deep, rich wood, we knew that it would exude that warmth of the fireplace. Even when the fireplace isn't lit, you feel that warmth of the
Yeah.
mesquite.
Yeah. Oh, I just love that. It was so clear to me when I walked in the very first time that Abode just embraces the healing aspects of all sorts of different art
Yeah.
forms.
Yeah.
We're talking a little bit about the visual aspects and the nature
Yeah.
elements, but also music, yoga, the sacred geometry
Right.
found in the
Mhm.
labyrinth. Um, and we explore the art with the guests and everyone who comes through the doors. Why do you think that art is so important for people at the end of life?
Well, one thing that stands out, I think, is the sense of beauty and calm presence that it conveys. Um, when we, at different times in our lives, might be needing to have refreshment, to have a beautiful image to look at on a wall can help us to focus and to have a sense of being cared for. And beauty is such an important aspect of of awe. And wouldn't we say that in some senses that a person in abode who's dying, who's in that time of transition, is also potentially touched by awe? And maybe that's a counterbalance to fear, because that's also a part of a process that people might experience as they're coming to the end of their lives. But there's support in so many ways, and as would be the case most often, a person is in his room alone, and so the doors that open up with the blinds that are able to see out into the yard brings a certain sense of contentment, perhaps. A beautiful uh, image of a still life on the wall across from her might also bring that sense of home, perhaps. But the thing that I think is very much a part of the process of being and of creativity is being open to that in any moment, at any time. So, when we come in to spend time with guests at Abode as volunteers or doulas, potentially we have a chance to explore those with a person, but also to be open to the imagination too. What might be coming to a person at the end of life who might be dreaming? What might be coming to the person at the end of life who sees people who've come into the room that no one else sees? What are those? What are those talking about in terms of a presence that, as we say, that there are things that are seen and things that are unseen, but we recognize that that's part of a transition from from a place of being able to see what we might think of as real into what might also be seen as real, but just on the other side of the veil. So I think those things are part of what happens in the sense of transitioning, where beauty and art and images can make a real big impact.
I really think that art opens the door of the heart to be able to experience the divine.
Yeah.
And all of the, the language that we may not hear that comes through experiencing the art on the walls and outside, and the music, the yoga, all of those act together to be part of the guests' last days. And those are just beautiful days for them, peaceful, tranquil, filled with their own images and loved ones. So, yeah.
And the art that you all have selected to be inside Abode is very intentional to kind of help embrace that liminal space that Edwin was describing. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you chose the art pieces and what was important to you to fulfill that need and that desire for people at the end of life.
Well, we have a lot of, well, we're artists ourselves. So we have a lot of art friends, and we started out raising our money to build the home through art. And we happened to be able to get 16 1800s era doors because we were having our first fundraiser at Lambermont Mansion on Grayson. And she had a pile of doors in the driveway because she had just remodeled the home extensively. And I said, "What are you going to do with those doors?" And she said, "Well, sadly, I just have to take them to the landfill because we can't use them." And I said, "I want them," and not knowing at all what I was going to do with those. And immediately she had her workman take the doors to our house. And Edwin was there, and he said, "Are you crazy? What are we going to do with all those doors? 16 doors." And so later, when we were talking about raising money to build the home, we had just bought the property, we decided to give those doors to artists to paint. And we auctioned them off at the first fundraiser, which was called Open Our Doors. And some of those, doors were they were so beautiful, so unique, so creative. Some of them, well, one of them is in what we call the quiet room, and it's actually a table that's lit from the inside, but it's one of the doors. And one of the artists made her door into a coffee table. And then, they used their own distinctive methods of art. One is just covered with all these little metal pieces that are cut from olive oil cans. And Brother Cletus, who did 2 doors, was, he's just wild and colorful. It was amazing what they did. And we made quite a bit of money. Some of the doors went for $5,000 each. So we did quite well, and totally. And so some of those artists later donated art pieces to Abode. And throughout, our years of raising money, because we don't rely on any government money, we don't get money from the hospices that tend to our guests. We have to make all of the money that funds the care and the home of our guests. So most of our fundraisers have been art shows. And so from those art shows, artists have given one of their original pieces of art. And we just made sure that they were something that was, tranquil and wonderful to look at and would inspire both the family members and the guests too.
I think that's what's striking about the style of art that's in Abode is that it is eclectic, it's very evocative of the community, but it's also peaceful and tranquil. We're not trying to be political or illustrate death in any way, but it's usually nature scenes, it's bucolic scenes, but scenes that really evoke peace and openness. And I love that that's how it started with the Opening the Doors campaign. I
Isn't that
absolutely love that
wonderful?
story.
Yeah.
It was amazing. We were able to announce that night at the fundraiser, Help Open Our Doors, that we had bought the property. We had been able to raise the money to buy the property. So we were, in a sense, ready to begin moving into building the home the next year in 2014.
See,
So
art
it
will
was
always
really,
find a way.
yeah, yeah,
How do
yeah.
you think art, and let's talk about visual art first, but how do you think visual art can help people process their death, the dying process, grief?
One of our first guests at Abode, Carolyn came to us with end-stage dementia. And she was really in those final stages of dying when she came to Abode. She'd stopped eating, and was really not interacting or responding. Well, as it turns out, when she got to Abode, she rallied for several months. In fact, I think Patsy has a story about being sent to the grocery store to get, was it a
It
watermelon?
was, they just said, get something that's really juicy because she wasn't eating, so that she can just put it in her mouth, and then the sweet juice can, you know, kind of um, give her sustenance. So I found a watermelon. It was in December, and 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 she loved it. And then, oh my goodness, even though she was almost nonverbal, she asked for French toast after that. And
Oh.
then she asked for pork chops. And she just started eating. And
You opened up her palate.
yeah, yeah.
And then as time went on, the volunteers that were, and we were just, she was our second guest, I think, maybe our third. Volunteers were engaged with her in so many ways, and one of our volunteers was an art therapist, and so she invited Carolyn to paint. I think it was finger paints, wasn't it?
Well, I love this technique because Carolyn couldn't function really well with her hands, but she put watercolors into little bottle caps.
Oh,
And then Carolyn would pour it on the paper.
Oh,
oh, yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And the colors would blend. She did some beautiful artwork, and we used that artwork for one of our Christmas appeals. It was so beautiful. And then Ed, her husband, after she died, has that artwork. It gave him such peace. He
Mm-hmm.
has it on his wall
Mm-hmm.
and at his home. But the thing that was important for Ed was that she didn't know Ed anymore. She had dementia, and she kept saying, "Take me home. I want to go home." When before he brought her to Abode, she didn't realize she was in her own home, and she thought he had kidnapped her.
Oh,
And 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 so he tried to use reasoning, but you can't really do that with someone with dementia. So finally, he brought her to Abode, and she said that she felt like she was at home at
wow.
last.
Oh, it was her spiritual home. Her spirit was at home.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I
It's,
love that story
yeah.
about the watercoloring as well. I think that's just such a beautiful depiction of how it can help someone who's in the dying process, but also can give comfort and joy to the people that are left behind,
Hmm.
her husband.
Yeah. Yeah, and in a sense too, if a person would be open to experimenting with color and paper,
Mhm.
um, as it is as artists, I notice, and I'm sure Patsy would say something similar, that when I'm in the process of painting or making an art piece, or I'm writing or poetry,
Mhm.
that becomes the focus. And in other words, it's a very contemplative practice to paint or to write, and one becomes, in a sense, all the things that might be in my mind just kind of are washed away, and I attend to the present when I'm painting. And I think that's true for people who might be interested, who are at the end of life. doing something with color and with imagery and
any kind of art, really.
mm-hmm.
I mean, my cousin Regina lost 3 of her family members in a period of 3 months: her daughter, her brother, and her mother. And her therapist suggested that she do ceramics. She had never done that before. And so she made some beautiful pieces. But it's very physical, ceramics. You have to kind of throw the clay, you have to roll it. It can let out your anger and your grief. And she made these beautiful vessels that look like beehives. And it was a safe place for her to go within, to go in and express all of her, her denial, her grief, her sorrow, and then finally, acceptance of her life and without her loved ones. But she then became a beekeeper.
It
Yeah.
led to her next career.
Yes, and she really finds a lot of joy in that. So it can be any kind of art, and as you know, it can be dance, it can be song, it can be poetry, it can be walking the labyrinth, it can be just hearing the threshold singers who come to Abode, or anyone that comes and plays the guitar or the Native American flute. All of those things bring joy and peace.
Well, I think it goes back to what Edwin, you had said before. It's almost the antidote to fear, is it brings you into this space of awe. And you're in the liminal space of creativity and in the flow. So you have that contemplative experience. And I think it's just such a lovely way to understand or maybe even befriend our own mortality, and maybe even come to terms with the grief that we feel when our loved ones pass.
Yes, and as would be the case too, oftentimes the person who is dying is in a state of anticipatory grief. He's with people who love him, who might be also experiencing that, and image making can kind of help one let that appear in a way that's fairly natural. In the sense that, if I'm as in watercolor as an example, if I'm playing with watercolor, the way that I paint anyway is that I let that kind of reveal itself to me in terms of image making. Well, so a person might find that that's a very comforting practice to do. And in a sense, sometimes we think of art making as sort of extraordinary, but really it's really quite ordinary. And we all have the capacity to explore that in different ways. And, I think sometimes too, people have a tendency to exclaim, "I'm not an artist. I'm not going to have a creative bone in my body." But in fact, I think maybe if we move the language a little bit to talk about just making images and having fun, in a sense, that kind of gives people permission to explore a little bit.
How has this helped you befriend your own mortality? And has it helped you heal throughout your life, this art form, this contemplative practice?
Well, I think we have been noticing more and more that it shows up in our art. And like, for instance, I keep doing art that reveals the cycles of life, like the birth of a plant, the growing of a plant, the sprouting, the blooming, the fruiting, the birds and the animals that come and eat it, and nourishing them, and then the withering and the dying, and finally going back to the earth and starting the cycle again. So, we see it all around us, but I don't think we really think about it too much. But that's exactly what happens at the end of life, and what we want to help people who are coming to Abode to understand that it's a natural process and that it isn't to be feared. And I think art helps that along the way. It helps ease that and inform everyone that this is okay and it's not scary. It's part of the plan part of nature, and that we're there with them to walk them on that path.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful.
We're going to do a mandala workshop with the Fiber Arts of San Antonio group, which is a very active, really multi-talented group who gather working with fiber from all kinds of directions. And in this instance, we're going to talk about mandalas and their importance in the circle of life, and how when we engage in making mandalas, it can tell us a little bit about our own lives in a way that maybe we haven't explored them through image making. And the way this works is people paint a mandala in a group after some instruction in terms of what the mandala might be able to tell us about our lives. And then after everyone's painted, we all get a chance to see the painting. And the person who's painted it gets a chance to talk about it. And the people who are looking at it get the chance also to ask or show, maybe reveal some imagery that the person who's painted it hasn't really noticed about themselves. So I think in a way, the way that I paint and the way that I really like to explore imagery when I'm painting or when I'm writing is to really begin with what is. And for me, that might be sitting on the couch where I write and just beginning to write. And mostly these days it's poetry. Or if I'm painting, just to pick up what is in front of me and begin to explore and see what it wants to reveal about being, and not necessarily trying to come to the painting or the drawing or the writing with anything in mind in terms of what I want to convey, but let what wants to be conveyed to be a form to which I can explore some.
It's important for it to be just intuitive and fun, not to try to make a masterpiece.
Yeah.
Just, choose the colors and the shapes that come to you naturally and not even plan it at all. And it can be quite cathartic and also revealing.
I can imagine that is so healing and can keep your cup full when you are approaching art in this way, not to create a masterpiece, like Patsy said, but to really allow it to reveal what's inside and it nourish you as you're allowing it to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in some ways, we come to terms with the impermanence of life, that we all are companions to. Like death is sitting right here next to me, and also that sense too that as we create, we open up the possibility of being more in tune with just ordinary everyday life, which is in itself such an awesome experience to imagine. I sometimes say, well, when I'm talking about being so grateful that I'm living, is that other opportunities to be on this earth might have been as a grain of sand, but here I am as a human being with awesome gifts of perception and awareness. And how can I open that up a little bit more so that even washing the dishes becomes a moment of awareness and gratitude?
Oh my gosh, this has been such an amazing conversation. And I wish we could speak all day, but I want to let viewers and our listeners know, how can they find out more about you? Can they find you online and learn more about your art and follow you?
I do have a website. It's just patsysasek.com. And so on our website, we'll let people know how they can come and see our art.
And maybe talk to you, because I think people would love to just curl up at your feet and chat about art.
Oh, we would love it too. It's just the most wonderful subject. And I was so grateful that Edwin loves it as much as I do. And, art has been our life, our whole marriage, really. So it's just so appropriate that Abode is just an extension of that.
It truly is. It's an extension of your soul and your heart combined.
Yeah, and the journey itself in creating Abode, that form of creativity of giving attention,
Mm-hmm.
was really a matter of trusting too. Trusting the process, not really knowing what it would be. And for many, many, many years, just kind of still, gathering with people and talking about this vision, this idea, and how would it manifest itself. So, trusting the process is really a very important part of growth into
Trusting the
something,
universe.
into a
Mm-hmm.
universe too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
Well,
So,
one thing I ask all of our guests is, what do you want to do before you go?
I think we both want to make sure that Abode continues and grows and flourishes and sprouts and, uh, nourishes people and guests and the community in a beautiful and artistic way. And that's our goal now, and also just being with our loved ones and friends and we have a wonderful community at Abode. They're our best friends and they're our confidants, and we share so much with all the programs that we do at Abode. It's just a wonderful thing. We weren't even expecting that, but wow, what an added benefit that is.
yeah, and I guess in that same way, those are those parts of our lives that we're so engaged in and grateful for. And you know, I've been beginning to understand and appreciate that it's not so much what I'm doing, but what I'm being engaged with. And I don't know if I could say that what I wanted to do before I go is just continue to learn how to love more, to wake up more, just to be aware and grateful, and and to appreciate this journey with Patsy,
Yeah.
that we've been on for a long time.
And I have to say, all of the people that came together, to build Abode, to create what it is now, to put art into it, to all the people that are there now and will come, who are being trained, the funders, the donors, the supporters, and the doulas that program you teach, Natalie, those that come and do yoga and sing, and staff members, and the wonderful volunteers. The volunteers are our roots, really. They hold up the house. They're like householders.
Yeah.
And that's how it will continue. We're grateful that we're part of it, but we're letting that go. We're letting everyone do the beauty that they do in the world for Abode, and we're happy about that.
Yeah.
Hmm. Wow. Thank you so much. I really loved this conversation.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank you,
Natalie.
Natalie.
Yeah, so grateful for you.
Yeah, we are.
Grateful for
All that you
you.
do. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Before You Go, the official podcast of Abode Contemplative Care for the Dying. At Abode, we believe death is not a medical event, and we are not medical professionals. We're just sharing our opinions, and these opinions shouldn't be taken as medical advice. You can find us online on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. This episode was edited by Make Your Day Richer.